up till now we have installed passport, configured it, created also some dummy data. So now we have to create a root so that we can see those data. I'm going to create in the roots api.php, as this is an API. We can just moments ago we have changed something here in this auth.php. You can see API driver is passport. So here in this file we are going to make some route to fetch the data. I'm going to delete this and create a new route here. Route that would be get, and the endpoint we can call it as anything and call it as details, and it should return to some controller. I'll create a new controller now, that is details controller. Create a function, index function. In that function I've written the data which we have just generated using faker. So now let me create this controller, PHP artisan make controller, details controller. You can see controller has been created successfully. You can see we have this sneak controller, details controller, and here in this I'll create a function index and I will return that is details. So this will return all the data from this table, from this model detail, and which is associated with table details. So now let's run this and see. And in API we have this details as an endpoint. So I will run PHP artisan serve. So here I'll go to API/details. You can see this is all the data. This is the ID, email verified, password. So you can get all the data of the users. So we're actually getting the data. So by default anyone can access this now. Any user in this instead of this localhost, I can give some, if I hosted this in some server, anyone can get this API/details endpoint. So we don't need that. We need only the authenticated users to get this data. So for that, first we need to protect our root, and this is our root. By default there is no protection here. If you see, initially we have some basic root which has some protection. So let me Ctrl Z and check it, Ctrl Z and show you. You can see middleware auth API get user function, this is the one. So we need to do the same thing here. So I will just use this instead of that returning function. I will use this. So now we have also protected our root with this middleware. So now if we go and see we are getting some error. So now we can't access that because we have protected them with this API. So only authenticated users can access. So but now we have to create those authenticated users. That means we have to create a registration form so that users will get registered and will generate some client IDs and secrets, and with that client ID and secrets user can access the data here with this endpoint, as we have seen previously without this protection. Now the data is shown like that. The data will be shown to the authenticated users. So first let me create a registration form. For registration process I will just use Laravel's basic authentication scaffolding, so that I can just run PHP artisan make auth, so that it creates some view files. So I will use those view files. It also creates some controllers and routes, so I will not use them. I will just delete them and I will use just the view file. So I will open my terminal now and run the command PHP artisan make auth. It says authentication scaffolding generated successfully. So that now if we go to this app http controllers, you can see this new folder for controllers. This is auth controllers. What I'll do is I'll just right click and delete, as I'm not using that. And it will also create some roots here in web.php. Just delete it. And it also creates us some view files, resources, views, auth. I'm going to delete this passwords directory. Delete. I will delete this login.blade.php file. Delete, because I'm not going to use, this is not a conventional web application, this is an API. We don't have logins using the interface. That too, that login will happen in the consumer app, not in this app. So in this app you can only register the users and they will log in from that consumer app, so we don't need any other extra files. So I have removed everything. So now I'll create another root just for registration, and I will use this register.blade.php which comes from this scaffolding. And if I go to, I will save this and I will run this now. It's serve, yes, it's running in 8000 port. You can see in the register.blade.php the form action is URL to register. That means we need to create another root here, that is the post, because this is the get. And when post, the same thing we need to implement for post, but we are not going to write a return here, but we are going to call some controller and write there. So as we already created some controllers, I'll use one. I will use, actually you can create new controller. For this tutorial purpose I'm using the same controller, but in real time it is better to use specific controllers for specific for a group of things. I'm going to create this function in this details controller. So as I said before, for registering we'll create the user and also this OAuth client ID and client secrets. That OAuth client ID and client secrets will be in OAuth clients table, and the users details will be stored in users table. So we need to store data in two tables at a time when this registration happens. So for that, so what we need to do is either perform the two transactions, that means two operations, or perform none. We should not get a situation where user is created and this OAuth client ID and client secrets are not created, or some error came or some error had stopped it from creating this client ID and client secrets. We should not be in such situation. Either user should be created with this client ID and secrets, or nothing should be done. In that case we use something called transactions. Transactions have this functionality to perform multiple insert operations, and if there is error in any of the operation, all the operations will be cancelled. For that purpose we use this DB transactions in Laravel. There will be a begin transaction, so initially we'll begin the transaction, and if there is any error we'll roll back in between the transactions, in between any of the insert operations. If in any operation we'll get error, we'll roll back. At the end of all the operations, if we are not facing any errors, we'll commit. So only when we commit, all the details will be saved. Until then the details will not be saved in any table. That's how these transactions work. So basically I will tell you the structure how it works. First there will be begin transaction, it will be in DB begin transaction like this, and now we'll use some try. I will perform operation 1, and in catch we'll throw the DB rollback. So in the try we'll perform all the insert operations, and similarly we can do it for multiple operations. So this is the second operation. If it fails, we'll roll back. That means in this situation or in this situation, if anything wrong happens, that will come into the catch block, and in this catch block it will roll back. That means neither of the operations perform. So for all the operations, after all the operations and after all the operations and all the operations are successful, we'll use db commit, then this transactions will be performed. That's how we are going to implement this registration process. First we'll save the user, and with that user id and with that user id we're going to create a row in this auth clients table, and if both are successful then we'll save them. After that we'll get the client id and client secrets, so I will return them to the user. So now let me start this registration process. So let me delete all this. First I will call this begin transaction method, and then I will use some validations, basic validations on the registration form. I will also use this try block here, and in this try I'll use some basic validations. As we are registering in the users table, we'll ask for the unique email, the name is required and the password is required, and that should be confirmed. And all this comes from this basic this registration form. Put name, this is name, and this input name is email. So password and confirm password, all this comes from this registration.blade.php file. From that we can use this name, email and password fields, and if it comes with some errors, we'll return back with errors so that it will catch the errors. And there is also some setup for showing the errors. You can see if error has email, it will show some email errors. So there's already setup here that with this file has come from the default Laravel scaffolding. So we no need to do anything in this case for these validations. After validation, if validator fails, we will return back, else we'll do the actual registration process. And here I'll write another try block for registering the user. This is the try class block for registering the user, and this is another try class block for creating the auth clients. And after this, let me close this main try catch block, and in every catch block we need to use this db rollback. That means if there is any error in any of these cases, we need to stop them from executing the insertion processes. So now here in this try block, let me insert the user. So in this try block, I'm saving the user, I'm creating a new user. This is comes from request name and request password. Actually we need to use this request here. So this request, it will come from the name and email, and we are decrypting the password. So the this user create function will create the user, and if it successfully happens, it will go to the next instruction, and if it fails, it will roll back. That means it won't go into the next, it won't go to any instructions, and it will and here will show some error that funds failed or successful. So now we have saved the user. We need to save some details in auth clients table, and I also wanted to show some error here. This will be the error. We'll just return some JSON, and we'll show the message what is the error, and we will create auth client ID and client secrets for the user. For that we also need this we need to create auth client ID and client secret for this user. So we need to get the user ID. So after successfully saving, we can get the user ID, inserted ID, using this by using this ID. So after we get the inserted ID, we need to save some data in the auth clients table. So let us first look at the table and let us analyze what are the fields we need to create or generate. If we go into the table here, so this is the structure of this auth clients table. This is the ID which is auto incremented, we don't need to bother about it. This is the user ID, we have just got this field, and this is the name, this is the secret, redirect, personal access client would be 0 and password access client would be 1. It is revoked. As you see, there is default, there is none, and there cannot be null. Actually, you can see this null field is no for all of this, so that means we need to create all these fields, create values for all these fields, as these do not accept null values. So we'll get the name, that is we can get anything. The secret will generate some random secret. The redirect would be the URL, will give that we can give that localhost. This personal access client is 0 as they are using this password client, and this would be 1, and this revoked also would be 0. If it's revoked, it will be 1. By default it should be 0. So if we see the data here, this is the data. By default this is 1 and this is 0. This will be automatically created. So now let's create these fields. So first we need to get a secret. So I'll create a new secret using string random function, and I'll create with 40 characters secret. So this will create us the secret for us. And next we need to use this auth clients create function again here, as we have used with the user model. The user ID field will be the inserted ID, secret will be secret, name we can give anything. I will just give as a password grant, as this is a password grant and it's not revoked, it's created initially. This is the password grant, password client, that is 1, and personal client would be 0. And finally there is one more field that is for redirect. I will give it as localhost for now. So this will be created, and in this catch block and these messages here. So we have saved this auth clients and user, and I forgot we also need to create this model auth client. So I'll just create that in a moment. So let me explain this process here. We have first created a user, and before that we will check for validation. If there is any error, we will return back to the form with errors, and if there are no errors in the form, and we'll use the form details to create a user, and with that ID and some extra details we'll generate this client ID and secret for them. And then why is this try here? This shouldn't be here. Even in this catch I will use this messages. So this is how our basic register function looks like. So let me quickly now create this auth clients model. In the app I will create a new file. Before that, let me copy this. In the app I'll create a new file, and let me save it as auth-client.php. And now in this model, these basic things, giving the table name and giving all the fields which are to be fillable here, so that when you're mass assigning, all the mass assigned fields should be in this fillable array. As we are using this create function here, so this create function it mass assigns the values, so that for that we need all these fields to be in that fillable array in this model. So we have done it. So it will create a user and it will create a client ID and client secret for the user. And one more thing, this db transactions is not supported in MySQL with the database engine as my IISM. So make sure your tables are running with InnoDB engine. So let me show you that. This is the auth clients table, and I will run a SQL query here. I'm running alter table, that is alter table auth clients, and I'm changing its engine to InnoDB, and I will go. So similarly with this users table too, so we are using this auth client table and users table with DB transactions, so those tables should be with the InnoDB engine. So now our transactions will work. Make sure your table is with the InnoDB engine. Now these transactions should work. Now let us now we can check them as we are running this here in this register. You can see this registration form, but before that let me check this users table, and these are the users. There are no users. As you can see, there are no users here, and in this auth clients there are only these two rows which comes from default passport package. Let me register here. So it says successfully created user. This is the client secret and this is the client ID, and if I refresh this table, you will see this is the ID and this is the secret in this auth clients table. And in this Laravel Passport API we have some other field called some other table users, and in this users you can see this ID is created with name and details which you have given. So now finally we have created a user, his name, email and password, and in the auth client table a row is created with this user with client ID and client secret. So in the consumer app we'll use this email, password and those client ID and client secrets from auth client table, and then try to log in from that consumer app and then access the data in this API. So that will be the next part, and this is all about this API part. So we have created API, and if you remember, if you go to API/user, we'll get all the details, but we have protected that with the passport, so we won't get any such details now, and we'll be able to see the details in this API only with the authenticated users. So for that we have created a registration form. Users have registered, they have got their client ID, client secret, username and password. So with this combination they are going to log in their consumer app. That might be any consumer app. Here in this case I'm going to create another Laravel app that they will consume this API. So let's do that.
Thank you for watching. Now it's time to discover more. Simply click on the screen to subscribe to our channel, watch another video, and visit our webpage.